It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. I'm excited to talk with my guest today. We have a little different topic we're going to talk about relative to sales. My guest is Brad Zupp, and Brad is, I don't know, I guess I'll call Brad a world-class memory expert and captain or co-captain of the U.S. memory team, I guess you'd call it. Brad, is that what you call it?
That's it. I was the co-captain of the U.S.A. memory team last year
and there's
the World Memory Championships.
The World Memory Championships that were in Chengdu, China. And you're probably wondering, okay, what's this have to do with sales? And if you've read my books at all and things I've written, you know that I believe memory has a lot to do with your success in sales. Your ability to recall the details of the deals you're working on and the customers you're dealing with and so on, all of that, and not relying on having access to technology to recall it. If you can have it top of mind, you have an advantage over your competition. So Brad's going to talk with us today about things we can do to improve our memories to help us succeed in sales. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So let's talk a little bit before we get into the meat of the matter. Is, gosh, how'd you get into being a memory expert?
I know it sounds kind of strange, doesn't it? Well, when I was about to turn 40, I found myself walking into rooms and not realizing why I was there.
Wait. So at age 40?
Yes. Yep. That alarmed me. And I thought, okay, if this is 40, what's 50, 60, 70, 80 going to be like? Because I thought, like most of us, well, whatever age we are, it's just a number. It's just a number. It doesn't matter. It's just a number. But it was more than just a number if I can't remember things.
Yeah,
so
if you can't remember what the number is.
Yeah, it's like, am I 37, 47? Who knows what I am? So, and I also had an uncle who passed away after living with Alzheimer's or suffering with Alzheimer's for 10 years. And I saw, his degeneration. And I thought, well, I don't know. That it's actually he was my great uncle. So a little bit far removed from my main branch of my family tree. But I thought, if this is at all possibly hereditary, I got to do something. I'm not going to be, a 65-year-old sitting around watching Wheel of Fortune every day because I don't have the memory capacity to go out and live my life.
Yeah.
So I threw myself into memory improvement. I read everything I get my hands on. I started kind of testing myself. I was my own little lab rat and said, "Does this work?" Well, this book says this works. I don't know about that. I'm pretty skeptical. Let me try it. And I try it, and for the most part, most things worked. Some things I just didn't apply to me or I couldn't make happen. But I found myself enjoying the mental challenge of trying to remember better. And I'd read a Time magazine article about memory competitions years and years before that. And I was like, oh, that sounds, wow, who would ever want to suffer through that? Crazy people. And I thought about that as I was getting into this, and I looked up memory competitions and I went to one, and with very little practice, I came in like 19th or something, and memorizing a deck of cards and as quick as I could. And it's kind of like the first time you play a sport and you realize, hey, I'm no good at this, but I kind of like it. I kind of got bitten by the bug, I guess you'd say. So years later now, I'm a memory speaker, a memory coach, co-captain of the World Memory, or co-captain of Team USA at the World Memory Championships. And I'm really involved in both the sport of remembering and also I kind of like going around the world and saying, hey, people, listen to me. Your memory is important. We've got to pay attention to this, and we got to keep it sharp.
All right, we're going to get into that, especially because, again, I'm a passionate believer that's really important in sales, let's talk about these competitions, because you were describing them to me earlier before we came on the air, is pretty fascinating stuff. So you talk about memorizing a deck of cards. So you're given a certain period of time to memorize. You're given a plain deck of cards. You shuffle it.
Yep.
You turn it over. You look at the cards in the order they're in. That deck is taken away from you, and you're given a brand new deck, unshuffled, and you have to order it in the order that your shuffled deck had been in.
That's correct.
And you have like 5 minutes to do this.
Up to 5 minutes. My
Oh, yeah. Well,
best,
take your time. 5 minutes. Yeah.
my best in competition is 83 seconds. My personal best in training is 58 seconds to memorize a deck of cards. So
50,
I'm doing
52
58
cards
in 58 seconds.
in the
Yes.
order they're okay.
Yes. So, what I hope to show with doing this and going to these competitions, especially being older, there's some younger kids these days who are doing even more amazing things, if you can imagine. Because just like in a lot of sports, the older you get, you've got to change a little bit, and you're just not as good with any sport as you were when you were younger. Most sports, almost all sports, I should say. But what I hope to do by going to these competitions, memorizing cards, memorizing a random number for an hour to see how many digits I can commit to memory in an hour. That's amazing, and for the most part, what I hope to show is I'm just an ordinary guy. I'm not a prodigy. I wasn't, the perfect student in school. I'm not the sharpest tack on the bulletin board. But if an ordinary guy can improve his memory like this, why can't anyone? That's what I hope to do. So at the competitions, the World Memory Championships is a 3-day, 10-event competition. I could totally bore you with all of them, but basically it's memorizing numbers, memorizing the names of people, from pictures on paper, all within a time pressure. Some of them you have as little time as you can take, like the cards. Others, everyone gets like 5 minutes or 15 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour to commit as much as possible. At the end of the time frame, whatever it is, the information is taken away. We're given a recall sheet. Sometimes it's paper, sometimes it's a deck of cards to put back in order. And then we're given a certain amount of time to recall. Of course, that's under pressure too, because you have to recall as much as you can as in the small amount of time you have. And then that's taken away and graded at the end of the time. Your score is computed, and the team that wins, and the person that wins. This year as a team, we came in silver medal, which is the best second place ever for Team USA in the history of the World Memory Championship. So I was very proud to be a part of it.
Oh, congratulations. So who won?
An American won, which is great.
Oh, for a team competition, I was saying.
Oh, the team competition, the Germans won again. So Germans,
Again,
the Swedes, we beat the Chinese, which is nice. But the overall winner was an American friend of mine, Alex Mullen. He's a pre-med student. And so in the midst of studying, taking his pre-med classes, he also trained for the competition. And he came in first and was absolutely amazing, set several world records as he went along. It was quite impressive. Of course, he's, I believe, 23 years old, so half my age. But it's amazing what people are doing these days. And the power of our minds, I think, is a large untapped area.
Right. But as you talked about, most importantly, this is a learned skill. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, that's not, you're not born with the capacity to be, somebody has an eidetic memory, I guess. But most people, it's a learned skill. Just like sales, I think. Yeah, I mean, there are some people that can just shake a hand and, sell anything. It's like, here, sell this. Okay, great. Hey, buddy, check this out. They have the facility for building rapport with people and making them feel comfortable and so on. Yeah. But if you don't have that skill, I believe that skill can be learned. Right. You talked in one of your other podcasts about it being more of an introvert, as am I. But we know we can learn to turn it on, and we can learn when it's appropriate to be a little bit more extroverted, and we can have conversation stuff. All that stuff can be learned. Closing techniques can be learned. Asking questions can be learned. When to ask the right question can be learned. Asking leading questions, all that stuff in sales can be learned with a good coach like yourself. And I believe that the memory part of it can be improved as well. Now, I don't think that salespeople need to be as maybe crazy about it or as committed to it as I am. Because the neat thing about this is that so few people are even trying to remember these days. That's all we've got our phones. I've got my smartphone, I've got Siri, or I've got, Google to say, hey, remind me that I have an appointment tomorrow at, 3:00. Okay. And we're all set. Life is not an open book test. That's I keep saying that. And if people remember what it means to have an open book test is, you can take a test and have all of your textbooks and everything available with you to fill out the answers. And we used to love those in college, is have open book tests. They were easy. But they didn't necessarily show you what you knew. Yeah, there was always a trick to them, right? So more was demanded of you as a result of that.
So I
But
think
life is the
today,
same way.
I think today, with so few people trying to remember, a small improvement on a salesperson's part in remembering something makes you look like you're a superhuman.
Well, I think
I mean,
that's
it's
absolutely
like,
true.
whoa, he remembered my name, or oh, he remembered my kid at a baseball game, and he asked me about it, or she remembered I hated blue, and there was no way I was going to buy a blue car. Wow, she's amazing. Such a small thing, but
Well, the
when
small things make a difference. So
small things make a big difference.
a huge difference. So in sales, and increasingly, and just that regular listeners to the show may roll their eyes when I say this again, is just it's your success is more based about how you sell than what you're selling. And because crowded markets, we all look alike. All the vendors and sellers look alike. So it really boils down to first perceptions that you make, or first impressions that you make on people, their perceptions of you, their initial perceptions of you, really become powerful. And if you can't remember people's names, if you can't remember the things they've told you previously about what's important to them or the conversations you had with them, the difference is, at the end of the day, I talk about the most recent book is what I call the 1% difference. Is the winner in many sales, you only have to be 1% better than your competition.
Mm-hmm.
And that 1% could be just this difference between remembering something about the prospect that affects your relationship with them versus somebody that doesn't.
Exactly. And two of your recent guests, Jason Troy and Josie Ann, I didn't catch her last name.
Fagan.
I was out, I was grocery shopping as I listened to that. But she said, salespeople, you guys were talking about, adding value. And if you can, she referenced her relative who went to buy a Tesla, just went online, picked out what he wanted, and there's no salesperson involved. So as salespeople, we have to add value. And if you as a salesperson can just look up the detail and say, yeah, here's the detail, they probably don't need you. If a detail is just, look upable on your phone or something, why are they using you? Where's your value? As an introvert, I'd rather just sit here on the computer and go, oh, I'll look up that detail. Oh, that's what it is? Okay, I'll buy it. Or no, I don't want it because it doesn't work with me. So to add value, you have to know things and you have to remember those things to be able to parse them down. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to spend 4 hours on Google trying to figure out the answer. I'd much rather go somewhere and ask a salesperson or call a salesperson and say, what's the answer? And have them go, okay, well, this is because they have all that knowledge. But if they're just going, okay, well, let me look that up for you, I don't need that.
Well, you can't do that lookup in the middle of a sales call, right? And that's really where it's important, where you're actually involved in a conversation with the prospect. Yeah, you have to have some recall about your product and what it does and the value that you can bring to the prospect and the ways that you can help them make a decision. Because, and you raised a great point, is in the business to business space, primarily, is you're only going to be talking to the prospect because they don't have any more information they can glean from your website or anything else, and they've got additional questions and information they need in order to make a decision, so they have to talk with you about it.
Yep.
And if they could do it all online, they would do it all online. But you're still in a position where they expect that you are going to bring something of value. So you have to remember you have to remember some basic things. It's not, like I said, you can't always go refer to your computer or the internet or whatever. So let's start with something really simple, which is salespeople are historically really bad at. And I may give some tips on this. And this is remembering names.
Yes.
So first of all, why is it so hard?
Well,
I'll tell you why it's important. I mean, it's important because you're trying to build a relationship with a person.
Yep.
And if you can't remember their names,
starts you out in a bad foot, doesn't it?
Oh, it's horrible. And I always tell a story about this back when much younger, and my wife at the time, we hung out with this group of like 5 couples, and we'd see these people several times a year. And one of the couples could never remember either my name or my ex-wife's name. And it really became annoying. I mean, this happened over a course of years, maybe like 10 years.
And would you buy something from that person?
Well, absolutely not.
No, they can't remember my name after I've met them this many times. I'm not going to buy something from them.
Well, and they just obviously weren't trying. So, I mean, my childish response to it is I started calling them by wrong names intentionally every time we were together.
Just to mess with them.
Just to mess with them. But you don't do
Very
that.
mature of you, Andy.
Very mature of me. So you're not going to do that in a sales situation. So why is it so hard to remember a name?
Well, it's an abstract. And
well, you have a face to associate with. Why is it abstract?
That's why people say, "Oh, I remember your face, but I can't remember your name," because we see the faces. We generally don't see the name. You'd be surprised the number if you meet somebody at a mixer and they have a name tag on, name retention goes way up because you can see it written out. Even people that say they learn best by hearing. Mm-hmm. I think they're the rare side because even they don't necessarily catch the name. The other thing with the face is our minds love to remember pictures. Scientists done this isn't just Brad Zupp, supposed memory expert, talking. What I talk about is what the scientists have figured out and what I've tested on myself. And I know from what scientists say and what my mind likes is I can remember a picture so much better than I can remember a group of words on a page. Just because the mind likes pictures for whatever reason. So we see a face, and that's basically a picture, even if it's live. It's an image, and a name is something we hear or even just read. It's just a series of made up letters. I mean, letters are made up. It's just a way to communicate information. An A doesn't mean anything. Andy, that doesn't mean anything. So I mean, think of people who can't read. The literal Andy literally means nothing to them. Right. It's just, it's a made up thing. So our mind is kind of looks like that. Our mind is kind of illiterate in that memory way of seeing an Andy isn't memorable to it. Now, picturing your face and you holding a little Toy Story cowboy, that's memorable to me because the Toy Story cowboy, Woody, his owner was Andy.
Yes.
So if I picture you, we're at a business event or a mixer or something, and you're in your suit and tie and you're carrying around this life-size Woody, teddy bear, basically. And I'm going to be like, oh, I'm going to see you next time. And my mind's going to go, oh, he looks familiar. Oh, yeah, he's the guy. What was he? Was he carrying around a teddy bear? No, he was carrying around that Woody. Why was his name Woody? No, his name is Andy. Because if your name was Woody, I'd picture you with the whole Woody outfit on. I'd picture you, and instead of wearing your tie, maybe you'd have a bolo tie, or you'd have a cowboy hat, and you'd be wearing spurs with your expensive suit. So I'd picture that, and it'd be like, oh, why do I see him in it? Does he like riding horses? Is he from the out west? No, he's Woody. Hey, Woody, how you doing? And I'd have it.
So that's your tip then for remembering.
That's kind of an advanced tip.
Advanced tip for names is do an association. So
but the first part is what Jason Troy was saying about introducing people and stuff like that. Very hard to introduce people if you can't remember say, hey, what brought you here? Oh, your name's Andy. Okay, great. Oh, somebody over here. Hey, do you know Andy? Very hard to do that if you can't remember Andy's name for 10 seconds.
Right.
So that case, what I do is just hear the name. So often, like you said, people aren't trying, or they're worried. Do I have spinach in my teeth? Or, geez, I had that crab puff. Does my breath smell bad? Anything like that. We're not focusing. And someone says, "Hi, it was your first time here. My name's Andy." And we go, "Oh yeah, it is." What did you say his name was? And it's gone already because we didn't take a moment to hear it. So really, my first tip is from now on, anytime you meet someone, the first topic of conversation is just their name. People love hearing their name. They like feeling like you're trying to remember.
So using it in conversation with them.
Using it and actually just going something, repeating it once or twice. Don't be creepy, but just repeat it once or twice and try to think in your mind, oh, what does that remind me of? Okay, Andy. Oh, it reminds me of,
Toy Story, right?
Toy Story. Or, Brad. Oh, that reminds me of Brad Pitt. Oh, this guy looks nothing like Brad Pitt. Brad Paisley. Oh, he looks nothing like Brad Paisley. All right. But just that is enough to go, oh yeah, that's I'm seeing Brad. Oh, it's Brad. Yeah, that's it. Something to connect with what you already have. Velcro, you need two pieces to make it stick. So something is already in your mind with most names. And if you can just go, okay, do I know someone with that name? Do I know a famous person with that name? I wonder, that's a strange name. I don't have anything in my, so I wonder how that's spelled. It sounds like it's spelled like I met a good friend of mine years ago named Nafisa, which is, I think, a pretty common Middle Eastern name. But I'd never heard the term Nafisa, the name Nafisa before. And that was such, I'm like, I don't have anything to connect that to. So I'm like, well, Nafisa, how do you spell it? Is it N-A, I think it's N-A-F-I. And I spelled it how I thought it should be spelled. And she's like, yeah, that's it. And just that simple process of going, well, Nafisa, it should be spelled this way. Is it? Yeah, that's right. And we had a conversation about, what her heritage is, how her family named her that. Mm-hmm. And it's stuck ever since. I met a man named Setu. Okay, I got nothing for that. So we talked about how his family decided to name him Setu. And how do you spell that? Oh, S-E-I-T. Okay, great, I got it. So you can even have a conversation about John. Oh, John, is that short for Jonathan? Is it J-O-H-N or is it J-O-N? Did they call you Johnny growing up? Is that your nickname now? Or you prefer John, Jonathan, Johnny? Okay, John. Just that. You can have a 10-second conversation with someone about their name and it'll stick because, our minds know how to remember things. We just need to help them out a little bit.
Yeah, so lots of good tips right there is let's use that short conversation, few seconds, just engaging about the name, but also using it in conversation with them, not overusing it. So you're starting every sentence with Brad. Yes. Do you believe, or Brad, is this? But use it a couple times. That should help embed it in your mind much more reliably than it would be if you weren't doing that. So we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with my guest, Brad Zupp, in just a second. Hi, this is Andy. Connect and Sell is used by sales reps at nearly 1,000 companies, including hundreds of technology startups and several Fortune 500 companies, to overcome the challenges of getting prospects on the phone. Companies using Connect and Sell grow their revenues faster by enabling their sales reps to have more sales conversations in 90 minutes than they could otherwise achieve in an entire week. Connect and Sell can be deployed directly to your sales reps, or you can take advantage of their outbound on-demand service, which delivers qualified prospect meetings scheduled directly on your sales reps' calendars. Visit connectandsell.com to learn more about how Connect and Sell can start filling your pipeline today. All right, I'm back with my guest today, Brad Zupp, co-captain of the U.S. memory team at the recent World Memory Championships in Chengdu, China, and helping us some tips about how we can, as salespeople, how we can get better at remembering certain things, or everything, actually. And so we talked about, before the break, a couple tips to help make it easier to remember names. Now, the next big thing is we've got sort of a little bit of an issue with sales that's, not a new issue at all, is salespeople are so anxious to ask the questions they have that they don't really listen to the answers that they're getting. So what tips would you give people for listening in such a way in order to retain, right? Because this is a huge thing with making a connection with your prospect, is you finally get the chance to get in front of them, to start doing discovery and ask some meaningful questions and some insightful questions. But unfortunately, so often reps are really pretty scripted in terms of the questions they've got lined up to ask, and they're already thinking ahead to that second question before they hear the answer to the first one. What would you advise them in terms of how to listen for memory?
Well, certainly if you're in the situation, it doesn't always work this way, but taking notes is good because that gives you a chance to actually write down things, which will help your memory, and also to kind of stifle your natural reaction and jump in and what about this? What do you think? And be overly enthusiastic, just to jot things down. And obviously, that's more for a sales person that has needs to take notes, a higher end type thing.
Well, and let me ask a question about that, because I have this. I still, after decades selling, still have this question in my mind about whether I listen better just listening all the way through and take notes at the end of the meeting as opposed to taking notes as we go.
For me, and I speak for what works best for me, I haven't done extensive studies, but I do like to take notes as I go. But you don't have to. That's the nice thing about remembering. And it depends. If you're in a 2-hour fact-finding meeting with a prospective client, if you're a financial planner or something like that, or an attorney, you better be taking notes because, even me as a memory expert, I don't know if I'm going to remember that tiny but important detail they said 5 minutes in, answer to question number 1 when I'm at the end of my 90-minute meeting. But some people just sit back and hear it. I think it really starts for me before the meeting, before the actual sales call, and it comes back to being still and being focused, and that helps memory too. I hesitate sometimes to use the word meditation because it has a negative connotation to so many people. So you can say just sitting quietly and breathing, or going for a walk in the morning and at night, or doing an activity without the TV, without the radio on, without talking on the phone, and cooking a wonderful meal for yourself and being fully engrossed in that can be very helpful in just being present. So anything you can do to practice being present, doesn't have to be yoga or meditation, but could be jogging, could be weightlifting, could be tennis, where you're in the moment. The more of that we can do on a regular basis, at least a couple times a week, if not every day, I think the easier it is, at least for me, to show up for an interview or for a sales appointment and listen and be patient and hear and remember better, because I'm training my mind in other areas of my life to be focused and in the moment. So it's much easier to show up and do that.
That's interesting. It's a great perspective to sort of think about as you practice. If you're not going to practice meditation and being in the moment, or mindfulness, as you talked about, or you didn't use mindfulness, but
the same, that's what I mean.
Mind, right?
But some people go, "Oh, mindfulness! I don't want to do that." Whatever, going for a walk in the woods, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, let's call it mindfulness, because
why not?
Why not? And it's
We're
really
crazy.
It's really what it's all about. And we can't accommodate everybody. So that's really an important skill, and certainly I incorporate that in what I do. I teach it to audiences. I talk about how listening skills, about how to be mindful and present. Is what you're saying is doing that, then you're really opening yourself up to hear, and hearing is really the first step to remembering.
Exactly. There are really 3 steps to remembering, which I discovered as I threw myself into this years ago. First, we have to get the information, which is all about focusing and hearing, because we know how to remember. If most of the time, if we hear it or read it and we're fully present and we're concentrated and actually trying, we know that, hey, I want to remember this. Our mind does the majority of the work just on its own. We know how to remember things. The next step is saving the information. If you do get the information, but you're not remembering well, that's probably a saving the information. And that's all about having a messy mind closet. If your mind's cluttered and you're stressed out and you're just piling way too much stuff in there and you're not organizing it and not going through at the end of the day, kind of going, okay, what did I learn today? I'm going to put that over there. I'm going to sort through it. That makes sense. So that goes with it. Kind of group things together mentally. That's the second step. The last step is if you've ever said or felt, oh, it's on the tip of my tongue, and you're constantly put in a situation where you need to have the answer and you don't have the answer. And then as soon as you turn away, or the person turns away, or you leave the room, or you're done with your meeting, or you hang up the phone, you go, oh, yeah, that's the answer. It was in there and you were under pressure. That's a recall issue. And it's really important to figure out, where am I having the most trouble? Am I just not paying attention to what my spouse says? Or am I hearing what my spouse says?
Maybe the wrong example.
Yes. Well, that's it. For a lot of people, sometimes people roll their eyes with memory. I've got a great memory. I'm at work. I nail it. Nobody's ever said, "Oh, Andy doesn't remember things." I got the best memory at the office. Well, let's ask, Andy's family how he's doing. Because a lot of times, especially successful salespeople, are really successful, and then they need their downtime. And where does that downtime come from? Home. So we get home and we don't hear what our husbands say, or what our wives say, or what our kids say, or we hear them, but it's not, quote, important, unquote, because it's not, money making. So we don't try. We don't actually hear and take in what our husband or wife says. And that can lead to a lot of stress at home.
Well, obviously,
when people say, "Oh, I've got a great memory," I say, "Oh, for work? Oh, yeah, I'm great at work. Well, how are you doing at home?" "Oh, my wife says I have a horrible memory." And then it comes out because and that's often, of those 3 steps, that's often a focus problem. A lot of people dedicate so much of their time and energy and focus to the work that when we need our downtime, we blow off what our families say.
Well, so interesting conundrum though is, or I think it's a bit of a conundrum, is that, I think one of the prerequisites for sales success, unless you're doing just a really sort of rote sales, but anything, you're involved with a person, you're trying to solve a problem for a person that's your customer, you're trying to help them make a great decision, is you get that information in your head and you ruminate about it.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the rumination's having all that detail in there and then being able to move the pieces around to see if you can put it into an order that makes sense, right? And you ruminate on it, and you sort of have that insight at some point, not necessarily a eureka moment, but an aha moment. But you can't do that if you can't remember all the details.
Definitely.
But at the same time, but you're not necessarily like giving yourself a rest though either.
And that's true. And I think that's a process problem. I was working with someone who had a lot of a wonderful problem to have, a lot of calls, a lot of both inbound and outbound calls and appointments they needed to make. So much so that some days and even weeks, they were literally back to back to back. Mm-hmm. And it was an important thing. I got to talk to this person because they may want to move forward with this. And when you have a call, even say you have 3 calls, you have 9, 10, and 11, and they're back to back, you have enough time to run to the restroom. And then you're back at the call, or you're in the car driving to the next one, and you got just enough time to, drive through and grab something to eat, and you're at the next one. Where does the time come for that processing? Where does the time come for making the notes, or even just going through it in your mind with, the more they talk about it, the more I'm not sure we're a good fit, but we could be in 2 months, or we're definitely a good fit. And if I just remember to tell them about this, that's what will help close the sale, because that's really what their hot button is. But if we're back to back to back, how do you handle that? So my suggestion for this person was, as tempting as it is to book a 9, a 10, and 11, book a 9, a 10:30, and a noon or a 1 to give yourself that time afterwards to process. Because when you're just on to the next one, then you start confusing. Okay, did prospect A say that at 9, or was it prospect B at 10, or was it prospect C at 11?
Well, yeah, and think about it from the other perspective, the perspective of the buyer, who maybe has scheduled meetings at 9 with one seller, 10 with another, and 11 with another. Mm-hmm. Yeah, at noon, you tell them, okay, how are each of these different? In their mind, they're all the same.
Yes. So that's not so much a memory thing, but that's more of a management and a sales planning tool of how can I be my most effective salesperson? How can I best help my client? Are they really being served by me scheduling them back to back to back? Because the process, and I was a pretty successful realtor for a number of years, and it was before I really got into the memory stuff. Mm-hmm. And I had checklists, and I had notes, and I had spreadsheets, and I think all that's fine, because at some point, like airline pilots, don't hear me say I'm advocating, I just use your memory. Yeah, you're an airline pilot. You don't need a checklist. Just literally wing it. It's fine. Everything will be fine. Same thing if you're a real estate salesperson and you're doing a deal, you've got all these details you've got to handle. Do you really need to keep all those details in your mind for the 2, 3, 5, 10 clients you're in process with? I don't know if I could do that these days, and I'm the memory expert. So you have to decide what's important for me to remember. And that's a discernment issue. My mind can handle so much stuff. I'm not going to outsource everything. That's one end of the spectrum. But I'm not going to try to remember everything either. I'm not going to be the guy that's glued to his phone with the chime going, now it's time to remember this. Now it's time to remember this. But at the same time, I'm not going to be the guy who's forgetting everything because he has too much to remember.
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be that middle ground. And names of people, the people skills, I think, are the great things to prioritize in our memories. The closing is on the 30th. That's a pretty big thing. The home inspection has to be done by the 15th, or my buyer is stuck in this home whether he wants it or not. There are some things that have to be remembered. Other things like, the name of the assistant at the title company or at the law firm. Does that have to be remembered? Your client wanted to use them. You have no relationship with them. You have your people. You don't want to remember them. You don't need to remember them. Maybe that's something that can be written down on a piece of paper.
But the client's name, that'd be an important one to have.
Client's name, maybe the spouse, maybe the kids. And maybe that little Johnny had a semifinals game on Thursday night. Hey, how did it go Thursday with little Johnny? Did he hit a home run? He was hoping he'd finally do that. Wow. That's a big thing right there.
Yep. Well, good. Well, Brad, it's been great talking to you. How can people find out more about you?
You can find out more about me by going to my website. It's bradzupp.com. So think of Brad Pitt, which I look nothing like, and a zebra holding balloons going up in the air with an extra balloon, because there's 2 P's on my name. It's zupp.com. If people want a free report, it's bradzupp.com/ wait for it, free report. So that should be easy enough to remember. Say, I want the free report from that guy, and you probably will find it. And I'm available for coaching, but also public speaking. That's where I do the most good. I think I'm just going around the world trying to convince people to remember better.
And if only they could remember to call you.
That's right.
You would have more business. So, Brad, thanks for joining me. And remember, that's Brad Zupp. You think about the zebra balloons going up, extra 2 balloons, we'll say. That would give 2 Ps. And again, thanks for being on the show.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Andy.
No, my pleasure. And remember, friends, make it a part of your day every day to deliberately learn something new to help you accelerate your success. And one easy way to do that is to make this podcast Accelerate a part of your daily routine, listening on your commute, in the gym, or make it part of your morning sales meeting. Actually, I wouldn't have to do this end pitch here if everybody was remembering what I'd said. That way you won't miss any of my conversations with top business experts, like my guest today, Brad Zupp, who shared his expertise about memory and about how to use that to accelerate the growth of your business. So thanks for joining me. Until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.